and welcome to November 17th, 2020. Now, normally this is Office Hours Ask Me Anything, but for the next few weeks, we're going to be hosting some special guests live on the Office Hours Hour. So I will stay and take your questions for the next hour, but we have a special guest today, and that is Joel Barr. Now, before I let him introduce himself, please remember that you can ask your questions 2 zillion ways. You can put them in the LinkedIn chat, you can put them in the YouTube chat, you can put them in Twitter with hashtag DeltaCX, or you can use the URL which is above my head today, the anonymous link, which will come into my email, and that's if you want to tell me your work horror stories or something where you don't want me to read your name out loud. deltacx.link/AMA will get the question to me and Joel. We'll try to both answer all the questions, and we've got a few people already joining us in YouTube. So Joel, while we keep setting up, tell the good folks who you are.
My name is Joel Barr. I'm tasked with setting up an internal user experience research team end-to-end across the entirety of Cigna and soon to be Evernorth next year.
That was the short version. So Joel is mostly a UX researcher. So good person to ask some questions about research. And just to get a lay of the land, Joel, do you see yourself as an information architect or designer? Will you take any of those questions?
Probably not the person you want to ask, but I work with a ton of incredibly talented designers who I'm happy to either refer you to or maybe even be a guest on this show.
All right, you let me know. I know you know the good people. Ralitza is already here. She says, hey, Debbie and Joel. And we say, hey, Ralitza, you're right on time. Very often we don't get a lot of questions in the first minutes, and nobody sent me a question ahead of time. Just a reminder to those watching, this URL is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can send your questions ahead of time, and I queue them up and I jump right into them. If you can't make this Office Hours live, they are always archived on the YouTube channel. So just visit the DeltaCX YouTube channel and you will see all the things, hundreds of hours of videos. Yeah, there's things. And of course, please subscribe and empathize with the like button. Tell YouTube you like this video, won't you, please? All right, so we still have, let's see, what do we have? Ralitza says, I have one. Okay, don't forget to ask it. And we also have someone else who says, welcome, I might get your name wrong, I'm sorry. Ikaning says, hey, Debs and Joel, looking forward to all the insights. All right, so let's start with Ralitza's question, which I think will be great for Joel. What should a good research report contain in terms of content? Joel, do you want to start with that, please?
Sorry, I'm just writing down so I don't lose my train of thought again.
All right.
Good research report. This is just my way of doing it, okay? I typically, in the past, have done 5-slide decks. I front load the conclusions and recommendations on the top. So the very first slide, you see recommendations, conclusions, or conclusions, recommendations. And then it's who we wanted to know from, what we wanted to find out, what methodology we used, and then like some of the snippets about the study itself, and then again the conclusions and recommendations. It takes 5 to 7 slides tops. I've gotten away from doing long form research reports because nobody reads them. You'll tell senior directors and VPs, go read the study. They never do. So I've actually gotten into more and more doing video recaps instead of PowerPoints, or I'll use PowerPoints like half and half the screen. So half is the PowerPoint, half is is my talking head, as it were. And that has gone relatively well. I'm beginning to get away from even doing PowerPoints now because nobody says gee, I really like that PowerPoint. It's always, gee, you had a nice tie on, or wow, that was really insightful, or something like that. But they don't really. There's nothing in the text that really gets them going.
Okay, my quick answer to that would be I tend to adjust my deliverables for my clients, but then again, I live a little bit more in agency land. So for the project I'm doing right now, we did make a monster written report, but we had a lot to tell people, and if someone wants to read that report, hooray! We heard some people at the company were. We were also doing some shorter PowerPoints for people with just the high notes. We did a montage of video clips. We did a little bit of wireframing, some concepts. I mean, again, it depends on what the boundaries are. As an agency, I usually have a pretty big range. For this particular client said, we'd love to see a couple of your concepts wireframed, not as the way to go, but as a way to go.
Nice.
Yeah, so I would say it really depends on the job and the relationship with people. And normally I'm a musician, so I play to my audience. I will usually go to other people and say, what kinds of information can I show you that will help you understand what we've learned and what to do next? And some people say, I want a 15-minute meeting. And some people say, I like a report, whatever it is. So I like to play to my audience. Moving on. We've got Aftab, who says, hey, Debbie and Joel, I've heard the term atomic design being thrown around. What's it all about? I've got an answer to that. Joel, do you have an answer to that, or do you want me to take that one? I know you're more of the research person, so anything that's research, we'll let you start. Atomic design, as I've become aware of it, it has mostly been used for design systems. Ralitza says, thank you, really insightful. Atomic design, and I think there's a whole book about it from the guy who kind of came up with it. And basically it's the concept that in UI and to some extent UX, we can come up with kind of tiny pieces. Then those pieces are combined to be kind of components. Those components might be combined to be larger patterns, and that makes sense. But I tend to see that as more of a design system thing than necessarily a UX thing. But ultimately, I think it's something that we sometimes do without noticing. Like, okay, here's what it looks like when I've got a checkbox. Well, here's what it looks like when I've got a checkbox with text next to it. Well, here's what it looks like when it's a headline with a blurb of text with a drop-down menu. So I think in some cases we're doing these types of things without knowing it, and I don't call them atoms and molecules and things like that as atomic design does, but I think so. I would say, while I don't specifically subscribe to atomic design and I don't tell people I do atomic design, I think in some ways I'm thinking about what's the smaller piece look like, what happens if I have another piece with that, and what if there's another piece with that. And again, while I'm not an expert here, I think that's a little bit of the spirit of atomic design. Joel, you're thinking something to add here? Listening?
I don't know.
Thinking?
If that's what it is, and I don't know because I haven't read the book, but if that's really what it is, then what he's essentially doing is stating how projects get made in enterprise anyway. He's just putting a fancy name on it.
I think so. That's why I said I think I'm doing this, but I'm not calling it atomic design.
Yeah. In big enterprise, that's essentially it. You delegate out smaller pieces to other people. They come together in meetings, and then you take those products and put them together with other products, and eventually it comes up. Now, I will say that what that sounds like to me also is a siloed design method, and I also didn't hear anything about doing research to influence that design. In other words, people are designing for design's sake at that point, and that's not what you want. So that sounds an awful lot like silos, and I think it's UX research's mission to break down silos at any juncture if you can.
We should.
Because
Good.
Silo means that you're keeping a fence around your users. You're essentially gatekeeping. That's not right at all.
Yeah, so atomic design, you can keep throwing that term around, but ultimately, whatever you call it, just build components and patterns and make sure you're collaborating. That's where I'm going to go with that one. We've got a bunch more questions, so I'm going to jump in. Aftab says, that makes sense. Merci. I don't speak French, but you're welcome.
Oh, yeah.
So Solomon is here. I can't put the question up because I can't put up LinkedIn questions, but it says, how to identify what to research at the beginning of a project. Joel, what to research at the beginning of a project, or I guess how to identify or decide.
Well, so he's kind of got it backwards. So you find what to design through research. In other words, before you find the project, you have to research folks. In other words, you know what I mean?
Yeah, this is how to identify what to research at the beginning of the project.
Oh, talk to users. Just do generative research. Watch them do tasks, or just talk about their day, right? If you don't have the ability to record their screen or something like that, because we're all, if you're just starting out, you're on a shoestring, which means you don't have any fancy equipment. Have them walk you through what tasks and what tools they use during their day, and ask them how they do it and why they do it, and the projects will come.
All right, hold on. He added to that question when I wasn't looking, and his follow-up to that was, I understand if it's a redesign of existing products or tools, we might run usability studies to discover pain points. But beyond that, what might you recommend for a new project? I know that's a long question.
Just keep doing generative interviews. Just get people in a room and ask them, what problems they face and what their workarounds to those problems are, and if you can design a solution, what would that look like, and where the bottlenecks are, and who owns the tribal knowledge, and all of that stuff. What's manually, it's like, what's Larry's 4 things? What's manually hard, mechanically hard,
cognitive load. Yeah, I now don't have the PowerPoint loaded up anymore. I'm in big trouble. See yesterday's episode 87 for some yesterday was all about observational research. So I would say watch that one, learn a little bit more about that. And I'm going to kind of agree with Joel and just pick it up from here and just say that you can't go wrong getting a variety of users into a room or a virtual remote thing and just watch them do whatever's related to what your company or product does, and then you can ask them questions about it, and but watch their workarounds. I'd rather watch the workarounds than ask about the workarounds, and I'd rather kind of watch this stuff than try to come up with the stuff. So be careful of asking people these things. As we learned from Larry yesterday, people don't always recognize their workarounds, so sometimes even when you ask them, they don't know. So I think the best thing for a project is lots of generative research, and preferably something observational if it can be done remotely or safely whenever anyone's watching this video. I'm going to move next to John. Remember, this is Office Hours Ask Us Anything. You can ask through YouTube or LinkedIn or the anonymous link on the screen here, deltacx.link/AMA. We've got a question from John in LinkedIn, and he asks, and I'm sorry, I always wish everyone gave me your pronouns. I don't know if you're he. Please forgive me. What is the best way to show insights to stakeholders in generative and evaluative research? Okay, so Joel, your suggestion, I don't know if this is different from the question we started with, but best way to show insights to stakeholders in research.
Sorry, I'm just writing the question down. So
I know, I can't put this one on the screen. I can only put YouTube and Twitter on the screen. So tweet at me, peeps.
Best way to show insights. I guess it depends on if you're doing your report back live or not. If you're just sending something to a team, then I found that video is often the best way to do it. You run the risk, of course, of being a talking head, but it's so quick and so clean that people can take that insight and your recommendations, and then go, instead of sitting through hour long meetings where it's just, droning on. Nobody likes to listen to my gas bag rear end talk, right? And I surely don't want to waste the air because, I'm getting old and gray, and by God, I need all the breaths I can get. So, the other thing you can do is if you go back to Larry's talk yesterday, task-oriented personas. In other words, user research and generative research that is tied to a specific task, something to tether it to the ground, something that isn't kind of floating out there in the ether and the clouds as being random insights. You have to tether it to something. And I think that if we start tethering to task rather than to people, then suddenly we've taken the shift off the user themselves, right? In other words, off the person, and put it onto a task. And that's like, it's a little human factors for you, right? A little ergonomics. So it's about how the user deals with those tasks from a cognitive load and delight perspective.
Okay, thank you. And again, remember, everybody, you're always welcome to ask follow-up questions. We're happy to take those. And you can also ask a follow-up question to someone else's question. This is a little bit of a slightly delayed, a slightly asynchronous conversation, but we are live and so are you. And so we'd love to get all questions and follow-up questions or disagreements or whatever you like. Nothing has come into my email, so I'm not seeing any anonymous questions today, but please keep the questions coming because we are almost caught up once we throw this one on the screen. And again, please help me with your names if I am not doing a good job with them. Ikaning is saying, what are some trends that are influencing UX research currently? Joel, is UX research trendy? And if so, what's hot in UX today? Hot in UX research. Pow, pow.
That's a really good question. I am actually usually so heads down that I don't really hear about too much that's on trend. I will say that I've heard a lot more lately here about research ops and libraries and archive creation. I've heard, yeah, that's about. I'm sorry. I'm usually just pencil, head down and hard at work. I wish I was up on the trends.
That's all right. I will jump on that. So my answer to that would be that in general, a lot of UX is not very trendy. Most of your trends tend to show up in UI and visual design, and some of those trends are terrible and not accessible. One thing, I think Joel kind of hit on something that I do think is a bit of a trend, and that is more and more we're hearing about research ops and design ops. I think these words are trendy, but a little bit like atomic design, they represent things we were already doing. So I generally don't say research ops as much. I don't say design ops as much because really to me they mean and signify the strategy and operational approaches that we take to aspects of our CX or UX process at the company level, the department level, the team level, the project level. So you'll see some of those words thrown around and they feel a little trendy to me, but they represent things. Whenever I Google them, they just seem to mean strategy and operations of the things we're already strategizing and operating. So I would say the only other research trend I can think of is we're all trying to do research over Zoom because we can't go stand over people and do observational studies in person. So I think there's a swing right now towards remote observational research especially where the product might be digital and people can share screens. Joel, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I'll tell you one that I've noticed more and more, and maybe it's just the LinkedIn algo that's been bringing it to my feed more often. But one thing that we talk about all the time, but it rarely is done well or nearly enough, and that's accessibility for all.
Yes.
In other words, research and design for all people, not just the able-bodied user, for the alt-abled as well, indeed. So I think if there's one thing that I wish we would talk about more openly and share insights with each other as far as research goes, that would be where I would like to see it done. Because I think, like last night, I was asked to help refill a prescription, right, by way of using a scanner code and a phone scanner. Brand new phone, never been used before. I'm sure it's been used before, but it's recent, right? It took me a full minute and a half to get that barcode to scan, and that was only if I was very careful and literally breathed as though I were a sniper and focused the camera at the moment in between breaths. And I made a video of it, which I'm going to edit together and put up on my LinkedIn probably later today. And it's with a named company whose name, if you live in the States, you know very, very well indeed. And they have a wonderful UX research program and a wonderful UX design program. Now, why on earth are they not doing accessibility? Yeah. Now, my hands shake almost uncontrollably, and that's not great or anything like that. But imagine if you're like 85 and I've got the tremors that I do now. Oh, my God. Forget trying to aim that thing and get it into focus and well lit enough for the camera to pick up the barcode, because the barcode is about yay big, itty bitty. And you got me how they did the research on that, because, well, I think I know how they did the research. They took people who are able-bodied and who have steady hands and surgeons' hands that don't shake, and had them do it. But I have honestly no idea how they could look at that and be like, that's an insight that we should go and design around. I just don't get it. And so go on my LinkedIn page a little later, you'll get to see who it was and the struggle.
Yeah, I would like to talk to more people about that, because I never liked this, but certainly as I'm getting older, I really hate all of these what I call one pixel areas, where it's like, well, if you put your mouse over here, it's an arrow, but if you put it over here, it's a drag bar. And then if you move it one more pixel, it's not a drag bar anymore. And I know you wanted the drag bar, but you only get 1 pixel chance to get your mouse right there for the cursor to change to be this other thing. I really wish more people were paying attention to that and giving me more tolerance there. We've got a few questions coming in anonymously, but first we are going back to our new friend Ikaneng. And Ikaneng is saying, what would a solid competitor study include if we're trying to map out an end-to-end journey from digital platforms right through to non-digital touchpoints? And I asked, do you mean assessing the competitor and mapping out the competitor's experience? And Ikaneng said, yes. So, do you ever study competitor or the competitor's experience or journey?
I have. When I worked in innovations, you do that. Typically speaking, competitive research is done by the marketing department. That's who does competitive research. As far as competitive UX research, that's an innovations tool, and they make dummy accounts and have dummy email addresses, and it's all cloak and dagger, and they have I'm probably giving away too much here, but certain companies have certain accounts on certain platforms that are expense to the company just so they can find out how something works in another company, and then use that as a design intelligence to not do if it's incorrect or clunky or slow, or in the case of the scanner, not worth a poop, as it were, in terms of functionality. So yes, it happens. Solid competitor study. Maps are great. I typically have done them on spreadsheets, oddly enough, and I'm not a big fan of spreadsheets, but it is what it is, and that's kind of what I work with. So what I've tried to do, and when I've done innovations, is take a single task or product and take it from one end to the other. Great example of this would be when I worked in innovations with Lowe's, trying to figure out how to improve the process by which imports would go from a factory in China or Vietnam or Cambodia or Malaysia or half a dozen other places to our shores, to the distribution centers, to the store, to your house. And that process took a wall. I mean, it was huge. And the spreadsheet for it was like, scrolling, scroll, and you never reach the end of it. That's how many steps it takes to do that one job. And so that would be, it's a thorough mapping is really what it boils down to.
So here's what I would say. So in response to how do we do a solid competitor study to map an end-to-end journey, what I would do is, to me, you have a few choices. Like Joel said, you can sign up for the product, probably under a mysterious other email address, so they don't see that you're the competitor. And then you can kind of walk through it. But remember, that's you walking through it with your knowledge and your intelligence and your biases, however people want to pronounce that. So I would say another good way, depending upon what it is, would be to see if you can run usability, a kind of almost like an evaluative study with, I'll give you an example. On a project that I'm just finishing now, we did a remote observational study of a digital product over Zoom with a number of this company's customers. But the last group we recruited as not from the company, using other people's systems. And we watched 10 people use competing systems. And we paid them for their time. And of course, this company didn't have to have us do that. They could have signed up to X and Y and Z and played around with it. These aren't extremely private or guarded systems. But it was more interesting for us to come in with our hopefully unbiased research angle and watch people do these things. And we also did ask them questions related to what do they do before this? What do they do after this? Because again, since we can't watch people right now, we're going to ask them, they might be biased about themselves. They might skip some workarounds. That's probably as close as we're going to get end to end until it's safe for us to follow someone around. And another thing that I wrote down was you can, and this is more secondary research, it's not really going to give you that end-to-end mapping look, but you can do some secondary research. Ralica can tell you about this, like things like reading tweets and searching for what are people saying about the customers, reading their app reviews. Oh, I hate the way the system does this. So even though it's not necessarily part of your end-to-end map, it can also help identify some of the competitors' strengths and some of the competitors' weaknesses. And Ralica even wrote, she says, I suggest the template from Jamie Levy's book, UX Strategy. It's explained in a lot of detail and offers a great framework for competitive analysis. So that could be a thing. I do not make time to read books, so when you guys suggest books, I just parrot it right out there. So I hope that is a good book and a good choice, but I trust Ralica, so there you go. Ikaning, I hope that helps you out. Ikaning, you have put up another question, but we have some anonymous questions that have come into my email first, so I will get to yours in a moment. First anonymous question, which, Joel, to help you out, let me copy and paste this onto the screen so that you don't have to try to write it down. Give me 1 second to press my little call out button. It's going to cover up our names, but I will do it anyway. And zoom, clicking, pasting, posting. I'm going to have to make that font a little smaller. Give me a moment.
Oh,
Smaller. I think, does that fit in now? Okay, something like that. How can I disseminate UX research learning to my team and build up an increased knowledge over time? I don't want my research to culminate in a 30-minute presentation and then disappear into the abyss. Sounds like we're going to talk about a research repository. Joel, what say you?
First off, when you do your reporting out, share to as many teams as that particular research touches. If it touches mobile and the web page and the commerce folks and dev and engineering and product management, invite all those people to your readout. Really, the nice thing about user research, one of my most favorite things about it, is that it knocks down doors, or at least opens them without having to go through a gatekeeper, as it were. Here, I've got this information. Here, it's going to help you do your job much better. It's going to give you the voice of the user, and it's going to tell you what they want. Isn't that worth hearing about? Don't you want to be there for it? Boy, what are you going to miss if you don't get there and you end up missing out? You're going to, you got to leave the door open. And what I end up hearing about a lot is folks that are met with aggression or with obstinance from stakeholders and other folks within the organization who don't get invited to those sorts of things. It's going to be a learning process. You're going to get pushback. I wasn't consulted about that. Fine. Next time we do one of these, make sure that person's invited. Second, I would go back to doing videos of your readouts, because while
they live on a little bit longer.
Oh yeah, well, and take it from Debbie, who's got, how many shows are we up to now?
Well, this one, this is office hours. This one doesn't get counted. Only the podcasts get counted, and yesterday was 87. These are, office hours is every week for like almost the last year, so there's 52 of those, 50 whatever.
50
anyway,
on top of that?
Assume I have hundreds of videos on YouTube.
And so those will live on in time. And I think it's a lot easier to organize videos rather than 80 artifacts, or I have one project now that's got 242 artifacts. Oh my God. Good luck organizing those in a short amount of time in order for a presentation to put out the gist of what all is being worked on, right? So if you do them in little vignettes, you can literally say, here's the playlist, go listen to it. We do some artifacts, show and tell, but really we read out to you exactly what our research says. So invite everybody you can, share as much as you can that touches all those points, do videos, archive, and when people ask about, hey, we're thinking about doing this, or hey, generative research has uncovered this, you've got a whole playlist that you can send to them and be like, hey, we worked a little bit on that a couple months ago. Here's the playlist. Here, go learn.
Great, and and I would just add to that, a lot of people are moving towards research repositories. These are either cloud-based or intranet-based systems where all of your research artifacts can be uploaded and cataloged and tagged and metadated and dated. And that way, if someone says, hey, did we ever study how people feel about our pricing? Oh, let me go into the research repository and search for the word price. Hey, did we ever study what people think about our team version versus our enterprise version? Let me go into the thing and search enterprise. Sometimes they'll go to the researcher themselves, but they could also go into the system and look for stuff. And if you make sure that stuff is in there with good metadata, then people might be able to find some of these things themselves, and just make sure there's some short-ish bits, digestible bits, like some PowerPoints or some videos that they can quickly digest. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next question. I've got it queued up for the bottom, and it's a long one. It says, what are good tools to record and document UX research and the learnings we get through our efforts? It's a similar question. Are there any digital tools that you have experience with to code and analyze research data? The war room approach doesn't translate well to my shoebox apartment, and probably coronavirus. Joel, do you want to take that one?
I know this is something that Delta CX does, isn't it?
What do you mean? Because of my new secret tool?
In terms of recording and documenting research and that sort of thing.
No, we're not going in that direction.
No?
Nope.
Well, as far as tools go, I mean, there's so many of them out there nowadays, right?
And Frederick is also asking, similar question, Frederick's also asking if there's any repository software systems that people prefer. Ralitza, you researched some of these. You tell Frederick.
We don't get paid endorsements. That's the worst part.
No, not sponsored. Not sponsored.
I don't want to name names. Yes, they exist, though.
Yes.
And I, how shall I say this? I sing the praises of certain tools on my page that if you're interested, you can go back and look for and find. And hopefully that will help you gain an understanding, if not that company's subscription to their service. How's that?
Yeah, I think the best answer for that is I have not used any of these, some of these larger tools claiming to help you with your repository or code and analyze your research. If you go to Google and you type in UX research analysis tool or system, you're going to get a whole bunch of people. And again, I can name a couple in case you want to start there and look at their competitors. This is not sponsored. I've not tried these systems. I've not spoken to these companies. They could suck. They could be great. I honestly don't know. But a couple that Ralitza showed me included Dovetail. And there was another one which I didn't like their name, but I don't know if it's a good system or not. Enjoy HQ. I thought that was a strange name. It sounded like pleased to enjoy HQ. But again, if you, even whether you like these or not, whether they're right for you or not, I don't know. I haven't tried them myself. I'm not a paid customer, but you can start there and you can always Google things like Dovetail UX competitor and things like, and start to kind of branch out, because I don't know exactly what you need. So when someone says, hey, what are some digital tools to code and analyze UX research data? Sometimes I'm putting stuff in Mural. Sometimes I'm typing notes and I'm tagging it. I'm not really using any of these big systems, at least not yet. For my last project, we tried Descript. We did not like it that much. We paid for it. We're probably going to cancel it. We weren't totally happy with it. Sorry, Descript. So, war room approach. It sounds like if you tend to do the war room thing, you might need Mural, or some people use Miro, where you kind of want to recreate that everything's on the wall thing. But of course, now everything's on your computer screen thing. That's a little easier for me. I've got a 32-inch TV as my screen, so it's almost a wall. But for people working on laptops or, I've got Microsoft Surface here. It's a little dude. I don't have a lot of great suggestions of recreating the war room thing online other than maybe Mural. Joel, anything to add to that?
I throw a couple, seeing as we're naming names that we're not sponsored by or endorsed.
I'm not sponsored, and I don't claim to endorse any of these people.
I have a friend named Zach who's the CEO of a company called Aurelius that does a repository that keywords out. When you put something in, it keywords everything for you so that it's easily searchable. It also will integrate with Jira, so that's a nice little metric. You can tell who's filed error reports or whatever on whatever your design was and when it's out. It's a nice thing for validation. Virtually any tool, user interviews, user Zoom, any of those really are going to dovetail, are going to have some kind of repository that you can store, your materials in. Now, the two questions you want to ask is, one, can you export? Right? Because if you can only watch in that company's viewer and you can't take it out anywhere else, then what happens when your subscription ends or you don't re-up?
Right. If you don't want to stay with that system, I hate when a system doesn't make it easy. I think there should be amicable divorces in tools and systems.
Yeah. And then who owns the research, of course? So what's to stop that company from essentially taking on your research as their own, and what do they do with it?
That's for checking terms and conditions.
Yeah, so in big healthcare companies like the one I work in, we have to have everything on our own servers because there are very serious security concerns to worry about when dealing with vendors. That's why our procurement process is so long and arduous. And while I absolutely curse it at times, it's well worth it. You don't want people stealing health information and social security numbers and all that.
Sure.
It can get real complicated real quick and real messy real quick. So there are great tools out there, and Zach and Aurelius and all those guys were user researchers prior to doing what they do, so they understand what a good repository actually looks like. They're not designers by trade; they were researchers to start. So that's one thing to consider. Who is the author, as it were? Is it somebody from marketing, or is it somebody who actually has done user interviews and that sort of thing on the ground, in person, ethnographies and the like?
Yeah, and for what Joel was hinting at, I'm secretly working on a UX research SaaS, but it is not going to cover that aspect of research, and so you are welcome to go look up other people because I'm not going to compete in that space. So we've got another super question from Ikaning, and it was, when we were speaking of accessibility, where do you think Google's new iconography broke down, and how would you have done it differently? Joel, do you have an opinion on Google's new app or system icons? I assume you've seen them. They're going around LinkedIn.
How much trouble can I get into, and how quickly with the big guys?
Endless. We're not sponsored. Google doesn't care about me. Say what you want.
The brutal thing is that a lot of those researchers are friends of mine on LinkedIn, and I am not privy to what their research was around, or even if they did icon research. Icons that are colorful like that are typically done by marketing,
right? Not
user research. So I'm presuming that they got focus groups together, 40, 50 people in a room, paid them each $100 a pop, and ran icons by them, and hey, what looks good to you, and what set of icons looks the best, and then did some kind of regression graph, and you got a scatter plot, and boom, bang, boom, there you go.
Who doesn't love regression analysis and scatter plots?
Right? Do I like them? I don't. I'm kind of no opinion because I'm not a marketer. I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of market research insight that pointed them to it and was like, that's the answer right there. I'll never know. And I'm as a UX researcher, I'm often reticent to second guess the thoughts of another company, and surely remiss to try and second guess a big daddy like Alphabet and what they were thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I'm not afraid to. So basically, my thoughts are that there's a couple of things. When I look at the Google icons, there's a couple of things that spring to my mind, but again, as guesses. I don't even have friends who are working there, but that's mostly because I don't have a lot of friends. But one thing that I think is, that's not a pity moment, that's a celebration moment. One thing is, we don't know what they were shooting for. If they were shooting for, how do we make all of our icons look like they're part of the same system? They certainly did that. But did they do it like to the detriment of some of the individuality of the systems? Because even though you want them to look like a cohesive system, like I think Office 365 does a good job with making you feel like the PowerPoint icon has something in common with the Word icon, has something in common with the Excel icon. These seem to be part of a family. So I would imagine Google was going for, and again, I don't know, let's make these icons look like they're part of a family, because Office 365 did that well. Adobe does that well. And so Google did that, but I'm not sure they did it well, because I think if we're hearing complaints about accessibility, if we're hearing complaints about confusion, I don't have a problem telling the Word icon from the Excel icon. I don't have a problem telling the Photoshop icon from the Illustrator icon. There's something not quite right about the Google icons when at first glance you're not too sure which one you're looking at. So I think Google has made a mistake with their icons, but I think with the good intention of making their products look and feel like more of that family, that suite. So can that be fixed and improved upon? Of course. Should this set have been released? Maybe not. But again, I can't tell you what went on there, but that's my thoughts about that. But that's me guessing, because what do I know? Now we've got, you want to add to that?
In a few months, it'll be like, oh, those have always been that way.
I don't think so. I'm looking at them and I'm like, they just look blurry and weird, but I don't like to wear my glasses. Just a quick reminder, everybody, there's still time to sign up for my Acture 2-day workshop. We're going to do my core skills program, which I wrote and created. It's a 2-day workshop, December 3 and 4.
Nice.
It is $60 to do the live workshop for me for 2 days. That is a large discount because I used to charge $900. And with that, you get my suite of core skills videos. That's over 9 hours of videos on my core skills program. The videos were shot under Acture 8, and the live thing I'm going to do under Acture 9, so they're a little different, but the techniques are the same. So please use the link deltacx.link/DEC2020 and mark your calendars for December 3 and 4. If you'd like to come to the live workshop, it will not be broadcast live on YouTube. You're going to have to come into the Zoom room where the secret sauce will be percolating. But please sign up. I think we have 22 people signed up, so it's small enough to still be pretty personal. I was hoping for 200, but that kind of didn't happen. So Frederick says, I downloaded a plugin that reverts Google icons back to the other icons. Well, that's a little weird. I can see why you would do that, but there you go. That speaks for itself. Also, please remember to subscribe if you're on YouTube. Ring that bell so you know when I'm live or posting a video. And of course, have empathy for the like button and let the YouTube algorithm know you love this shit. So, as Joel would say. And so, let's pull up the next question. This one came in anonymously, but I have pasted it. And it says, how would I go about doing an observational study of a mobile phone application under the current COVID-19 restrictions? I am obviously not able to see how my users are touching their screens and interacting with the system. Joel, any suggestions on remote mobile phone studies in the pandemic times?
Man, that's a hard question. I can think of 2 ways you could do it. 2 ways off the top of my head that I can think to do it. The first is to have them walk you through what they're doing out loud, which they should be doing anyway, right? But if you only care about observation, let's suppose, I'm just sure that there's a way you can show a screen on a mobile phone. I don't know if WebEx or UserZoom or any of the other like ones, user interviews, or have the ability to where you can maybe show the phone interface, like the screen, and then maybe put somebody's picture up in one of the top corners, maybe, and somehow record their facial expressions, or their body language or something like that, if they even comfortable appearing on camera. Um, that would be how I would go about doing it. But make sure that your users are talking out loud at all times. That's the main thing. So let's suppose there is no such application right now, which means that if you're an entrepreneur, get to work on it. That would be how I'd go about doing it. Because you could have a user go out and get a new one, have them put it behind their head while they're doing the phone, but that's just awkward as all get out, and nobody wants to. Nobody operates like this,
Yeah, if we're going for a realistic study, that ends it right there. There are some systems that can record phones, and when we just did our 71-person remote observational study and had people share screens, we did have a few people share phone or iPad screens, and we invited them into a Zoom call. So at the very least, if they do have Zoom on their phone, they can do that. There are a couple of I think many of the user testing tools or usability testing tools out there can do phones, but Joel's still right, and the person asking the question is right in that we're not going to get like the angle of what they're doing with their finger or how they hold their phone. We usually just see the taps on the screens or what happens. So I think for something like that, yeah. What's your thought?
I have another way, and it's not a great way, but it would do. If they happen to have a laptop, they can bend the camera down to where they're interfacing with the phone. Now it'll be upside down. So when you go back to edit the video, you'll have to flip the image right side up so that you can see what folks are doing. But in a pinch, that would work too.
Yeah, I was thinking something similar is like taking my camera here and saying like, okay, hi, I'm doing this, but also be sharing the screen from this so that we're recording all of these. Now, I don't know about how Zoom or others would handle that. I know one nice thing about the system, the TV in a box system I use for this, is that it's got a feature called multi-quarter, where if I really did have Joel and me and things and whatever, I can tell it multi-chord and it will give me a separate Joel file, a separate Debbie file, and I can edit those together how I want. I don't know which system does that, but I know that you could try to replicate some of this maybe with Zoom or their competitors. So there we go. We've got a few more minutes here and we have a few more questions. Good friend of the show, Maggie P, is here, and she says, what's the hardest research project you've tackled? What made it hard? And what was the outcome? That's up on the screen. Joel.
Holy mackerel. I'll tell you one from my days at UHC. This is, I can't really tell you what the outcome is because it's kind of...
This is back, I got to run my back in the old days graphic.
It totally is. So there's this thing called ACBC, which is an adaptive choice behavioral conjoint. Adaptive choice behavioral conjoint. If you say it fast, nobody will know what you're talking about. What it essentially is it's a card sort that works with bundling, and then it's how much, and then it's a do you prefer one or the other type of thing, like an A and B test kind of way, but it's in 3 parts and it's just one test. Now, it was something that a team within UHC wanted done, and they went to a bunch of different vendors, and in the end it was my capability and the other in-house UX team from another part of the company. And the other part of the company wanted to do touch screens, and they wanted to do very complicated interfaces, and it would be a whole new program that was specially designed. So my boss came to me and was like, here's what they're going to do. I want you to figure out a way to do it on a shoestring. right? So we're going to go from incredibly complicated and very technically sound, right? Because it was essentially going to be designed in-house and video screens and the whole bit. He wanted me to do it on a shoestring, so I ended up doing it with push pins, note cards, and markers, and rubber bands, and those little metal clippy things that you use for document, right? And follow the exact procedure and everything like that. The only difference was, instead of having them do touch screens and heat maps and eye tracking and all that, I just had my users talk out loud. And I was incredibly fortunate to get a user group that enjoyed doing user research. Presumably they'd done it either before or whatever it is, right? And the result of it, of course, was that they ended up choosing the more expensive. They ended up choosing the very technical one with the pretty touch screens over my version, which would have saved them. I think on total it would have saved the company something like $80,000, $90,000. So it is what it is, and you can't help it. People are going to make the choice of who they want to take their research from, and in what way.
Always the weird stories. And what looks like possibly our last question for today. And this one I really want to spend some extra time on because I hear this one a lot. Okay. I find the hardest part of my research often to be gaining access to research subjects. Do you guys have any hard-learned tips and tricks on how to gain access? And I think this has to do with, A, you're not allowed to talk to users, or research doesn't talk to users, business analysts do, or nobody talks to users, or whatever it is. Joel, how do we convince people to let us talk to users?
It's a nut I'm still cracking, actually. It's something that I run into even now. There's one thing that I despise almost above anything else, and that's gatekeeping of users. Or the other one that you'll hear is we don't need to talk to users, we are users.
Or we know what people want. We're successful, we're growing, we must be doing this right.
Yeah, it's seditious, and it betrays everything that user experience is meant to, or even CX is meant to tackle, right? So, and we'll do the differences between CX and UX another day, right? But one thing that I've found is whoever's doing the gatekeeping, make sure they're invited to the session as an observer. They're not allowed to talk. And that's one thing that in spreading the evangelism of user research at my company presently is one thing that is I've had to repeat over and over again. Yes, you're a PO. Yes, you're a PM. You're here as an observer, not as a participant. Therefore, you can't say anything. Otherwise, you're going to color the research. You're going to emit bias. They're going to think that they're talking to their bosses. It's not good.
Right. It's everybody's an observer, but not everybody's a researcher.
Yeah. And when you make them part of that process, definitely put them in command of their own observation. So I have observer sheets that I hand out to everybody. I do another method where I take a page from my good friend George Zhang in his Start, Stop, Complete thing, where I hand everybody sticky notes, right? Have them put Start, Stop, Complete on them and make piles. And then when we go and do the debrief, whoever's the gatekeeper goes first, right? And that gives them the feeling of being included in the research. One, two, it makes everybody feel like we're being inclusive, and we are. We're opening the door to everybody who touches that particular piece of work. And then third, we've taken down the stigma of research being a threat to legacy parts of the business. Remember, UX research is still the new kid on the block in a lot of large enterprises. they've made the investment in design, right? Now they're starting to say, okay, we need research to influence design. So they had the first part right. Now they're starting to put the second part in place. And so UX research, like UX design used to be, is now the new kid on the block. And therefore, there's going to be some pushback and there's going to be some turf. And the only way you're going to not appear as a threat is to throw open the door and invite folks in as observers to take part in the research.
Okay, now Ikening wants to sneak in one more question, but before we allow that, let me just remind everybody what is coming up for the Delta CX podcast universe. Tomorrow we go live with Leon Dries, and we're going to be talking about job titles, job levels, and the future of UX. And then that's it for this week. And next week, Monday, I will be doing my new talk. I just did this at a conference. I'm going to be talking about CX and UX strategies to reinvent the customer experience. It's a little bit more on the strategic level, but if you like it, come ask questions and tell your boss. Tuesday the 24th will be Office Hours Ask Me Anything with special guests Darren Hood and Dr. Nick Fine taking your questions like this. Wednesday the 25th, I just scheduled. This is going to be with Tiffany McIntyre, and we're going to learn what does a human factors engineer do.
Nice.
And so I'm excited to get to know her better. She's a little bit new to me. And so that's kind of what's coming up on the Delta CX channel. Now, since we are totally out of time, and Joel, thanks for staying a few extra minutes, let's put up our lastest question from new member Ikening, and I hope you've subscribed and rang the bell and pressed the like button. What are some rules of thumb you swear by during research projects? Ooh, let's both answer that.
Do you want to go first?
No, you are the man. Well, yes, you are a man, but I'm just saying you're a guest.
It depends on where you are in the project or in the project. You said research project. So are you doing the pre-planning? If so, then it's make sure everybody's involved that needs to be involved. Make sure that you have clear directives in who, what, where, and when you want to speak to users. 3, make sure your research proposal is met with not approvals necessary, but an acquiescence across all the stakeholders. Make sure your methodologies are clear. You have a pre-plan before you go in. Write your script. Very important. It's not just a bunch of random questions we ask. We actually have a script when we go in. If you're talking about the actual work itself, the actual user interview, I typically tell people to use the Larry Marine approach. Shut your mouth. Don't talk a lot. The greatest gift we can give our users is silence. Just let them talk. Don't jump in after they finish the thought. Sit there, look at them, smile, nod, say uh-huh, and watch what happens. They'll start to offer more and more insights because they know that you're listening to them. Mm-hmm. And then in the readouts again, so that's doing the actual work itself. When you do the readouts, try to be as clear and concise as you can. Another script would probably be good, just of insights that you've gathered, recommendations and conclusions. Do the video. Make sure you archive it. Make sure you tag it appropriately, because somebody's going to sit in your chair 20 years from now and go back to the research ops library or the archive that you've created, or repository, or whatever you want to call it. 20 years from now, somebody's going to go back and they're going to need to find that study so that they're not reinventing the wheel and wasting the company's time and money. And we'll use that research to influence a design way on down the line. So I don't know about rules of thumb, but those are kind of like my bookmarks that I try to run by with every project I do.
That was awesome. And I think the one thing that I would add, and I know this, not everybody agrees with this, so you're welcome to disagree with this, but one thing that I like to suggest is for generative research, I don't like to have any hypotheses. I don't want to have any guesses. any assumptions, a lot of people say, go into your research with a hypothesis. When it is generative research and I just want to learn things about who customers are, or what do they do now, or what is the competitor like, or what are their workarounds, I don't want to go in with hypotheses, because I think that hypotheses can accidentally or on purpose bias us, where certain types of personalities, maybe not me and Joel, and maybe not you, Ikaning, but certain types of personalities love to prove their hypotheses right, even if it means fudging that research a little bit. And so I don't like to go in with, I think we're going to learn that users really like this, but don't like this. And I would rather say, you know what? I have no assumptions about users. I'm not going to make a hypothesis. I'm just going to go in and learn everything I can about topic X. But I'll tell you, in the last project we did, we were supposed to research topic X, and I'm telling you, we got A to Z in at least 4 Romance languages. So, and that's because we did a good job asking open questions, making people feel comfortable, and letting people know it was okay to complain. It was okay to talk about negative things. And all of a sudden, we learned 20 times the amount of things we really expected to hear about. And to me, that's very successful generative research, when I kind of accidentally went out of scope and I learned a mountain of stuff about other things, which now will hopefully inspire not just other change in other areas of the product, but fresh research to more specifically look at the things that we weren't there to look at, but ended up learning a little bit about. So stay away from hypotheses. Don't box yourself in. Don't limit yourself to what you can learn in generative research. Joel.
The other thing is, I typically, those are great, by the way, write those down. There's a wonderful thing about being aloof when you first interview people. Same thing with usability testing. I'm of the school where I don't want to know what the design is going in. I don't want to know what the flow is. I don't want to know how it ideally should look, because all too often we forget that it's the product being tested, right? And so if the user gets to a point where they get stuck, one of the worst things you can do as a researcher, if they have a question, one of the worst things you can do is answer it or show them the way,
right? Because
of your prior knowledge. And don't do that. And if you don't know it going in, when they get stuck, right, they're like, I can't move. I don't know what to do next. I don't know either. I didn't design this thing. We're in this together. We're in the same boat. This is our system that we're testing. Who knows?
Yeah.
And one of the most honest things you can tell a user, believe it or not, is I don't know. And that's a hard thing for a lot of folks to say, because we're all expected to be such experts at all things in our lives. Just say, I don't know. And how do you think you would get through it? How would you get through it if you could? What's your workaround?
I told the 71st person, I don't really know this system very well. This is the 71st time I've seen someone show me this system. And I told them, well, I didn't interview all 71 people, but I'm just saying, I've told the first person, the last person, I'm a researcher. I don't really know this system very well. I won't be able to answer your questions about it, but we'd like to watch the way you use it and ask you some questions about it. And there were actually a couple of people who said during the study, like, well, how come you don't know how to use this? Or why don't you know what I'm supposed to do right now? And what do you mean you don't use this company's product? And I said, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't use this company's product. I'm just a researcher. And then they were like, oh. And then they kind of liked that. But they had a moment where, because I came through the company, and so they knew who this was, they thought I was going to know all the things, but we made sure, and everybody who knows me knows I don't lie. To a fault. But I allow myself pretty much one lie on the planet, which is anything I say during user research and usability studies. I will say I don't know when I do. I will say I didn't design this when I did. And these are pretty much the only lies I allow myself in my entire life.
I'm not connected with the company. I'm just a user researcher. I'm not
I'm an
connected with the
outside.
company.
I'm an outside
I'm an outside.
researcher.
Right.
I didn't design this very often. I did design this. This was generative research that I just did. I only know a little bit about this system from talking to some of you users. And I had people, and it was funny. When I specifically said that to people that I didn't know much about the system, they went even slower and they acted like they had to explain it to me. Well, here is where I can type this thing, and I'm typing this here because of this. And I thought that was really interesting that they thought that they got out of, now I wasn't sure if it was good or not, but they got out of the space of just doing the task and thought they had to teach me the task. And I thought that, so I learned some from different angles from some different people, and I had a large enough sample where I thought that was going to be okay. But that was really fun and really interesting because they were like, I mean, even obvious things. Here's where I pull down this menu and I choose this because this is what's true for what I'm doing right here. And I was thinking, I kind of don't need this, but I'm not going to stop them.
The other thing, of course, is make sure that your users always know that no matter what they say, they're 100% right.
Yes.
It's one of those rare times in life where no matter what comes out of their mouth, it's true, it's right, it's correct across the board 100% of the time, no questions asked. And make sure they know that going in, because so often we as humans are afraid. We like being right? We're hedonists at our core, right? We love the reward of the smile and the nod, and we love being right. And if a user has the knowledge and has the understanding that they're right 100% of the time, always without question or pretense, it'll free them up to tell you all sorts of things, so long as you're willing to listen.
Yeah. We got to teach more people about research, which we started doing with yesterday's podcast, episode 87. And my experience doing this 71 person thing, even though I didn't meet all 71 people, my partner met some of the others. Really amazing the amount of stuff we got out of people. We did take an hour in most cases, and we really watched them do stuff, and we allowed some of our questions to go off the script. And I think that also, but especially by the time I was up to like person number 50, they'd go, I really don't know how to do this here. And I would be like, well, this is generative research. I think at this point I can say almost anything to these people. Like, what should happen here? Or actually I had people say to me, I'm angry at this company. I'm angry at your company because you did this bad thing and you did this other thing and you're allowing these bad things to happen. And I said, how would you fix those things? And they were like, oh, well, I would have AI search for photos that look like this, and that way these things won't happen. And it's like, we might not do that, but now they feel like someone cares about the solution. Even if my client ends up not doing anything about that solution, I hope that person remembers that I cared.
And sometimes it only takes one ear to listen, one understanding look, one understanding smile, empathy. We always talk about it, but really that's that's a big part of it is if you can
go. No, you're there.
If you can empathize with a single mom who takes time off work and puts their kids in daycare for an hour so they can come in and do an hour of research and what that costs them and all that, you'll get so many insights out of that mom. She'll be the star of your whole project because you were willing to get down on her level and understand where her problems come from and how she finds solutions to them. And what's Larry's thing? Make the intelligence part of the design, or make the
knowledge design. Build the knowledge into the design. Yeah,
he said it last night. Build the knowledge into the design.
There you
go.
I just want to pick up on something Joel said about empathy. I know we're running late. Thanks for the people who've stayed with us, and then we'll have to wrap up. So sorry, but I want to talk for a moment about empathy in all of this because of something that happened during my last project. And I was interviewing a woman about her experience with this company and using their system. And she was pretty angry about a lot of it, but angry in a very soft and subtle way, like frustrated. She had anger, but she didn't show it, but you could tell from her words that she felt it. And by the end of the interview, she had said a few things because her anger with the system affected her livelihood, affected her business, made her lose money, and hurt her ability to make money. And she's an artist. And by the end of the interview, when she had said, and because of this, I can't make money, I lose money, I struggle, I have to say, I started tearing up by the end of the interview. It was very hard to not feel with this person. And I want to remind everybody, and there's a little more to the story, that is the definition of empathy. The definition of empathy isn't, I got everybody in a room and we put a sticky note on a wall and we thought about the customer and we had empathy and we created empathy. The definition of empathy is to feel with someone. And I sent that video to the client and I said, when you hold your watch party, and they were holding watch parties, I want everyone to watch this one. And because this woman didn't speak English very well, I'm going to transcribe the hour of this thing. I'm not even going to charge you. I want you to know everything this woman said. And they watched it, and evidently everyone at this company was tearing up. Everyone at this company was affected by what this woman said. That's empathy, and that's creating empathy. And I don't want to hear that your design thinking exercise created empathy if no one in the room is crying. Because after watching this woman's interview, we were all nearly crying. Because you felt with her. That's empathy. We have a question coming in, Derek. We can't do it. We are 15 minutes over time. Send it to us next time. So, Joel, do you want to add anything to the empathy moment there? No, you're out of empathy. Yeah.
No, if I start talking about her, I'm going to start tearing up. So that's terrible. I'm sorry.
I can't talk about her without tearing up because I care about her that much, and I will never forget her for the rest of my life. And that's what empathy is.
So many I paint.
And fuck everybody who says that empathy is a sticky note on a wall and thinking about your customer. Empathy is I can't think about having met this woman for an hour without being worried about her ability to make money because my client could be hurting her ability to make money. That's empathy.
Will you keep up with her and give us updates on?
Oh, yeah. At some point when I get some money, I mean, she's doing well. She's been an artist for years and she's going to be successful, but there were definitely some things this company had done that put up obstacles for her, but they did not end her business. She is still very much in business. And when I can get a little money together, I also plan to have her paint something for me. I am not going to forget about her. But and I think she's going to be okay. I genuinely do, and I don't think this company is going to undo her business, but she felt like that was possible, and that was enough to get to me. In the time of COVID. All right, we should go before we start crying. Hugs, everybody, hugs.
Thank y'all so much for showing up.
Joel, thank you so much. Thanks to all the great questions, and be well, Joel. Wishing you well for everyone in your house as well, and we will see you all soon. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks for showing up. Have a great day.
Bye. Thanks for watching. Delta CX is available for consulting and projects related to CX and UX strategy, leadership, training, problem finding, problem solving, and innovation. Learn more at deltacx.com.